Welcome everyone. We are live with the second episode of the Sherpa podcast. I hope everyone is doing great on this Sunday. Let's start with a quick introduction. My name is Seikosha. I'm an official Sherpa for Battlestate Games for the Netherlands, and recently also a recruiter for any Sherpas that would like to join the ranks of Green. I play Tarkov. Obviously, I've been playing Tarkov for a long time. We like to play competitive as well, some tournaments, and of course we like to teach players and try to teach them something and how to get better in Tarkov, because we all know Tarkov can be super confusing when to start. So what's better than having someone that can just give you some tips and insights to get better at it. And today I'm joined by two Sherpas from the other side of the world. Cringy on my right and Afraid on the bottom. Can I get a quick introduction for you guys? Welcome.
Hello.
Take it away, Afraid. Who are you?
I'm Afraid. I am one of the deputy Sherpa coordinators, as well as being an emissary for the Oceanics over Australia, New Zealand, that part of the world. I've been playing for, I think, close to 10 or 11 wipes now. I just missed out on that alpha armband just slightly.
Oof.
But yeah, look, been playing for many years now. I'm sure there are many people in the audience that have taken home my tag. I think I've single-handedly finished trophies for at least half a dozen people. I'm probably a bit of I would say a bit of a shift W aggressive type of player. I do get bored very quickly, so I do like to get in there and make the action happen. Wasn't always that way. I did start off like everyone else, trying to work out why I couldn't get my M4 to work, because I'd completely missed the charging handle and I was a bit slower back then. But as time has developed, I've kind of moved on a little bit from that. I have been a Kappa enjoyer quite a number of times now. I think I've taken home Kappa 5 or 6 times out of those wipes. But yeah, it's certainly been a learning experience over the years, and going from being a large group player into being a bit of a solo player, and then moving back into kind of the duo trio type of gameplay. I'm really looking forward to having a chat about all the different play styles that I've learnt from, and I guess some of the advantages and disadvantages to each.
Oh, that's definitely right. We're going to talk about it both today, I'm very sure. Cringy, can you give me a short introduction, please?
Hey, I'm Cringy. I'm a Sherpa from OCE. Been a Sherpa since February, I believe it is. So slowly getting close to my 1-year anniversary as a Sherpa. I've been playing for, I think this is my 5th or 6th wipe now coming up. So currently, and yeah, I don't know what else to say really.
Well, before we get in some of the educational topic that we have prepared, let's ask you guys some questions so we can get to know you a little bit better and see how much you guys can learn everyone else today. Let's start with you, Crunchy. Obviously, you guys are both from Australia. Where are you from exactly?
I'm from just outside of Melbourne, so about an hour out of Melbourne, which is Victoria in Australia, and yeah.
So you've been a Sherpa for almost a year now. How long have you been playing Tarkov?
I've been playing Tarkovs for it must be, I'm not 100% sure. I've been getting close to 3 years, I think. I think I'm either on my 5th or my 6th wipe, so it must be close to 3 years.
Did you start playing before or after Reserve has been added as a map?
I think I started playing just as Reserve was added.
Yeah, okay, so that would be approximately 3 years then, I guess. Great. Well, so when did you become a Sherpa, and how did you roll into that? Was it something you always did, or how did that go?
I became a Sherpa in February of this year. And basically I was already trying to help people as much as I could when I could and where I could. And obviously I play a lot with Trent AU, who's one of the other OCE emissary. And of course, Afraid being an emissary and Trent being an emissary, they were in contact with each other, and then I was constantly trying to help people, and Trent kept on being like, you should apply to become a Sherpa, like, it's an official way of helping people instead of just doing it in your spare time. And after months and months of pushing and shoving, I finally decided to put my application in. Being like, there's no way these blokes are going to take me on board. It's not going to happen. And put my application in, went through my trial process, and just loves every single second of it. And been hassling Afraid ever since.
That sounds good, man. What's your favorite map? And does it like is the favorite map? Does it combine with your favorite or way of playing the game? Something that's similar.
So I get a bit of slack for this, but I'm actually a Woods main. Just for the sheer fact of you can play Woods in any way that you feel like playing, and you don't really get punished for it. If I feel like running a Bolty, I can run a Bolty effectively, and I'm not going to be completely punished for it as if I was going to try to run a Bolty on, I don't know, customs, for example. You can run the Bolty on customs, but you're definitely at a little bit of a disadvantage there.
Yeah, definitely.
I feel like playing on Woods, you can play any way that you want to play and still be effective. And Woods for me just has that perfect mix of everything that I want when I play Tarkov. It's got some loot, it's got some PvP, it's got some PvE, and yeah, I'm a Woods main.
So what playstyle does this Wood main enjoy? Or does that change then as well with what gun you're running or who you're playing with?
So it really depends on who I'm playing with. I used to be a bit more of a slow tactical gamer. Not quite a bushwookie, but a bit more slow and tactical. Think everything out, and really think about my next move. And then I started playing with Afraid a lot more, and another friend of ours, Lionheart. Shout out to Lion, and they are just absolute shift W demons, and it's kind of rubbed off on me the right way. And now I hear gunshots, and I'm like, "Ooh, let's run at those."
So you adapted to the teammates you're playing with. I mean,
I adapt to the way that we're playing.
That sounds good.
Playing with
definitely something we're gonna touch on a little bit later as well. Quite important. Right. Great. Last question I have for you actually. You've played this in tournaments, right? Like you completely skipped over it in your own introduction, but I'm pretty sure you won the Evasion tournament.
Yeah, I did.
Is there any difference playing in a tournament compared to playing a normal raid?
Well, yeah, there definitely is. You definitely feel a bit more pressure when you're playing in a tournament, because you know that there's when I'm regularly streaming, there's like 10 viewers or whatever it may be on that day. When you're streaming, you know that there's like hundreds of people watching, and then you also know that there's points on the line, and even if you say you don't really care about the end of the day, if you win or lose, everybody cares if they win or lose.
Yes.
You want to put on a good show. And it's the fact of also knowing that every single person in your lobby is good enough / confident enough that they want to compete against other people who are competing. So you go into a regular map and you're like, okay, there could be good players in here, but there may also be a bunch of people learning, a bunch of Timmies, where when you're playing in a tournament setting, you know that every single person you're going to bump into
is just as a demon as you. Yeah.
They are there to take your head off. So yeah, it's definitely a lot more pressure playing in a tournament, I feel.
I think if it's something I've noticed, like you realize that the pushing that you sometimes carelessly can do on a normal raid won't work as much playing a tournament like that, because it's one thing to push a guy that's maybe level 40 in his first or second wipe as a X amount of hours player. It's definitely something else to have someone with that amount of hour and playstyle and knowledge on the other end trying to push that one. They're gonna expect it more, they're gonna counter it more and better. So that's definitely something you need to watch out for, I'd say, personally.
Yeah, you definitely get punished for making rookie mistakes that you can normally get away with. You won't get away with when you're playing against a bunch of experienced players, that's for sure.
All right. Last question before we move on to Afraid. It's a question I ask all the guests on the podcast. What's the one big tip you give every newer player?
It's not really a tip, it's more a piece of advice. And it's just that you just got to stick with it. just make sure you try to stick with Tarkov when you're first learning and you're first starting to enjoy the game. It's gonna suck. Yeah,
No,
if
definitely,
anybody tells
man.
you that they got onto Tarkov and all of a sudden they were Shroud and they were wipe and lobby, they're telling fibs. They're lying. This game will beat you up and then beat you up some more, and then it'll think that you're healing, and then it'll come and beat you up some more. Even after 4,000-5,000 hours in this game, some days this game just beats me up. So yeah, my one piece of advice is just stick with it, play through it, roll with the punches, and you'll get through it eventually and really start to love the game.
Definitely, man. And then you're hooked. You can't play anything else.
Exactly.
All right. Pretty nice, man. Okay, Mr. Afraid, welcome to you as well, sir.
Thank you.
Very happy to have you both OCE guys in here due to the time zones. Mr. Afraid, what playstyle do you enjoy?
Well, like Cringy alluded to earlier, I do enjoy my more aggressive playstyles, being able to, I guess, pitch myself and my skills against other players. And like I said, I'd love nothing more than running into a geared group or a really capable player. And even if I lose, and quite often I do, knowing that I'm going to take something away from that, learn something, improve myself, and continue striving to be a better player than I am at the moment.
I think that's very important, right? Like looking back at your own mistakes, maybe clipping it or something, and just trying to think like, hey, how can I do that better next time? I think that's one of the key opponents of trying to get better in something like Tarkov. So a quick tip that has nothing to do with today's topic. If you want some great tip, look back at your deaths, clip it, record it, look it back, try to see how you can do something different. I like to say that sometimes I push someone so perfectly, it's only because I've died 10 times before in exactly that situation. It's made me like master, like, okay, I'm gonna push him this way next time. But little sidestep there. So obviously you're not only a Sherpa, but you're also a Sherpa coordinator. What is it like to be one?
Involved. There's always a lot going on. The Sherpa program is huge and only getting larger. We have a lot more things going on. These, podcasts are a perfect example. We're trying to reach more players, more regions, bring in more Sherpas all the time. So there are a lot of moving parts. I remember when I started 3 or so years ago around the Sherpa program, it was very much a very sort of NA, EU, a little bit of Asia, and there was, I think when I started, there were no OCE Sherpas at all, zero.
Which is not represented.
No, not at all. And obviously seeing the game growing as much as it has, we've had to try and scale up the Sherpa program, and not just the number of Sherpas that we have, but the visibility, because I remember when I first started, I had to go out and I had to go and find communities around, Discord and Facebook and that kind of thing, trying to find people that I could play with and learn from. And I was very lucky. I had some friends that had picked up the game around the same time that I had, and they had, a little bit more mechanical knowledge around FPSs, and they knew their guns like in real life a little bit more as well. So
that helps.
They had a bit of an edge going into it. That was a huge thing for me. Like I mentioned earlier, the number of times where I would go, why is my AK not working? And it turned out it had no gas tube on it. Like, things like that you wouldn't think about too much. But yeah, so it's really important. Obviously, we saw previously there was just the new player assistance thing. You had to log into your EFT profile to see it. But now we've got obviously the Sherpahub Discord. We've got these podcasts. We've got a host of new things coming on to really kind of push the program and try and do more for the community. Be as helpful as we possibly can.
Epic, man. I think you guys are doing a great job. I've seen definitely a great bunch of changes and growth on the Sherpa, which is absolutely epic. Maybe a question then. Do you guys need more or new Sherpas in the OCE region?
I'm actually always really hopeful to expand the OCE Sherpa team. Our regional Discord, if you haven't gotten on it, discord.gg/EFTANZ, if there are any OCE people awake at 7 a.m. watching this.
Maybe when they look back. Maybe
if they watch the podcast back, absolutely. When I started as an emissary in October of 2021, I believe it was, we had around 4,000 people on that Discord.
That's quite a lot, actually.
And I think Yeah, well, as of last count, I think we have 7,900, if I'm not mistaken. So it just shows exactly how much the game has expanded. And obviously with that expansion, with all the new players coming in, there's always a drive for new Sherpas and being able to, I guess, push people into the Sherpa program, get more capable players like my friend Cringy here to get in there and sort of teach them the ropes and get them established as new players.
Sounds great. Let's try and see if we can look for some more, perhaps. So if you're interested in becoming a Sherpa, you enjoy teaching other players, you're good at it, you have the time, the patience, definitely sometimes, feel free to hit me or Afraid Up about that one. A little bit more about yourself. You already set your playstyle. What's your favorite map then?
Ooh, this is always a hard one. The reality is, I will always be an interchange degenerate.
No.
So the I think I probably have. You could combine every raid that I've ever done on any other map, and it would probably barely be 70% of the number of raids that I've done on Interchange. In terms of actual favorite map to play, though, I do really enjoy Labs and the play style of Labs, and I guess things like the lighting and the audio
I can
how
imagine.
that whole map plays out, and yeah, and the challenge of raiders and things like that. And I mean, a lot of that's to do with when you go to Interchange, sometimes you can run through, and if there are people doing stash runs and you're wanting to charge through the center, you may not get that fight at Brutal that you wanted to have, and you've got to kind of chase after it a little bit to get those fights. But no, look, definitely my if I fire up EFT at the end of a long work day, I can tell you now that first map that I'm loading
It's gonna be Interchange. Yeah. I think Interchange is great for team play as well, by the way. I think it's one of the better made maps because of the long flanks, the long hallways, the opportunities for teams to flank around and hold alleys and hallways, and the up and down going escalators and stairs makes it one of the best maps to play as a team one, actually. So good choice there, sir. All right. Thank you guys for the introduction, boys. Let's talk a little bit about some news. Let's start with the event from yesterday. Or that started yesterday. We've seen an event. Have you guys played it at all?
Yes, I played it all day yesterday.
Ooh,
I done probably 10 hours of the event yesterday.
nice. What did you think of it?
Personally, I think it's fun. I think it's fine. After playing raid after raid after raid, I kind of forgot that the buffs and debuffs were even there, if I'm honest. Obviously you get one tapped out of the blue, but
Nothing new there, I'd say.
Playing Tarkov. Sometimes you just play Tarkov and you get one tap. That is what it is. It just means that people with a little bit worse ammo can do that currently. You die a little bit quicker to some new ammos. And
definitely switched the guns
fine.
around.
I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think it definitely switches guns around. I've been doing some raids with an MP18 yesterday, MBT ammo.
Yep.
Something that I normally think is just a meme because you can run a Mosin and it will be 10 times more effective. And now I was just running around one-tapping people in the thorax, and I'm like, okay, nice. That gazelle chat went down in one shot. Let's go. So
yeah, I was using 545 yesterday and didn't feel like I was at a massive disadvantage the whole time. So
another good point.
That was good fun.
Another good point. Right. Pretty cool. Just a little before the podcast, we got an update on Twitter about the technical update tomorrow. Any opinions?
I think they're deleting Shoreline.
So it's
I think that there will be. Look, I'm looking forward to some technical improvements they always add into these, but I think that BSG being the sneaky characters that they can be when it comes to content, I think there's going to be an Easter egg hidden in there. I think there'll be something either event related or they're up to something.
Yeah, I think that's so too, man. And I'm just gonna 100%. Wait, do the update, load up the game, and be amazed by what could potentially be there or not. Actually, to be fair, we never know. Everyone that says that they know, they don't know. I think that's something that we've learned for sure over the years. Before we move on to the educational podcast, I have some good stats. You already touched on it a little bit, Afraid. I want you guys to guess how many tickets all the Sherpas combined have done this wipe. What do you guys think?
Ooh,
globally.
that's
Globally, yeah.
3,500.
3,500. Okay, big guess. Afraid, less or more?
So, I mean, I'm a little bit. I get to see under the covers a little bit because we do the checks at the end of each month. But I know that on a really, really busy month, so very early wipe, we can see easily 400 to 500 tickets done. We're say 4 or 5 months in, so I'd be thinking we'd be around the 2,500 mark, somewhere around there.
You're very close. Overall combined, all the Sherpas helped 2,169 people this wipe. And that's the statistics of last week. So you guys were very close in chat, Big Boy and Harley. And that has been done by an amount of 83 Sherpas from all over the world. And they are from 35 different countries. So it's kind of insane if you realize that there's 83 Sherpas helping people and they're from 35 countries. I hope that maybe in a year or so we can do this podcast again, wrap up the statistics again, and see if we can improve even with more countries and more people in that way. That would be great. All right.
Absolutely.
Are you guys ready for the main topic today? We're gonna switch to the big screen. And yeah, we're gonna talk about some effective duo team play today. Short introduction about duo team play versus solo team play. We're gonna talk about synergy. We're gonna talk about communication and positioning, of course, two super important things about effective duo team play. We're gonna talk about flanking and in special when to flank or maybe when not to flank, which might be the more important question here. And we ending with some tips and tricks from these 3 awesome Sherpas that you see here. And if there's any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, but perhaps it's a little bit better to wait until the end. We'll have a little bit of time to answer all the questions that you guys have that you can ask Freight and Cringy or me or any other Sherpa that's in chat. So yeah, there we go. All right. Introduction. I think the main thing that we want to try to teach you today is that communication is the key to cooperative gameplay in Tarkov. And if you master that duo or team play, you're going to be a force to be reckoned with by any opponent that are in your raid, right? Like, if you can get communication down, if you can get positioning down, if you can like get synergy with your teammate and you can do that every raid straight, that will be very, very hard to play against. On the other hand, I think what's also important to know is that if you do not have good communication, if you do not have synergy, your positioning is shit in game with your team, it will mean the opposite to you because it will only do worse for you and it will make you an easy opponent for your teammates, or sorry, for your opponents. It will make you very easy to shoot if there's just 2 of you standing next to each other. And we all have known the cheeky, oh, is this you? Is this you? Oh, I'm dead. And now that is something that will happen if you do not get these things right. So we're going to talk about all of that today. Try to break it down a little bit. Try to, I think, I can explain you why a pistol is good or bad because, okay, ammo is good or bad because of these and those stats, right? A topic like this, it's more of trying to get you in a mindset or trying to teach you the theory, but at the end of the day, you have to apply this yourself with your team and improve on it and put the time in to get better at this, right? So I'm not going to promise that after this podcast you're going to be a superhero cooperative gameplay Tarkov monster, but at least I hope we can teach you something that you can use in your own raids with your own team and get better at the game. We missed something? No. Okay. I want to start with duo versus solo because there's definitely advantages to, I think, both playstyles here, right? Like it could be good to be a solo, it could be good to be a duo. Afraid, could you explain everyone what is the best advantages of being in a duo? Are you mute right now?
Ooh. Oh, there we go.
There we are.
I've done the. Are you muted? Are you muted? Yeah. For me personally, I find that duo is probably the most dangerous group style or play style that you can really work with. I mean, I'm primarily a solo player a lot of the time, but when chasing PvP, you just cannot replace duo gameplay. Likewise, early in the wipe, when everyone is trying to quest and everyone's going for the same Jaeger's letter or the pocket watch and that kind of thing, knowing that you have someone there with you can make all the difference. And if it's someone that you play with a lot, that you trust, it's just virtually unstoppable. So I think the line that you use here, Seiko, what's better than one good player? Two good players, is absolutely on the money. And you talked about a few different things there. So flanking, positioning is huge in Tarkov, right? If you are fighting anyone, even as a solo player or whatever it might be, you take some shots, you know that you need to move straight away. The worst thing that you can do is give up more information to your opponent than they're giving to you. However, when you start moving into duo gameplay, and particularly if it's a duo that you really vibe with well and you really trust and you understand their style and that kind of thing, you start to be able to play in new ways. You can force the hand of the opposing team. You can corral people, you can keep them on the back foot, and you can really control any interactions that you're having within Tarkov. And that's not limited to just PvP situations. If you're talking about dealing with AI, let's say you're fighting a scav boss, and I'm sure we've all been there on customs, fighting around New Gas, trying to take down Rashala, and knowing that he has all his guards running around. If you're sitting there in New Gas and you're kind of pinned down a little bit, being able to call out to someone and say, hey, can you rotate around, draw their attention in another direction, that is a huge thing to be able to do. Flanking is super, super important. Covering while looting. Again, we've all heard, and we drill this home with anyone that will ever listen to me, the rule of there is always one more.
It's
It doesn't
always
matter
true,
how many
man.
people you've taken out. Yeah, and look, even if you sat there and you've watched 1, 2, 3, there's only 3 people there, and you managed to take them all out and everything.
There's always going to be that one guy just holding a body, right?
Exactly. Either holding a body or someone's been listening and they've heard that. They've heard that shot, those shots, they've heard that fight. They're like, "Oh, that was big. Something's happened." And they're going to come over. They're going to come have a look, right? And having a duo partner covering you. So again, rule number 1 of a duo, never jump on the same body.
We'll touch on that a little bit later,
on the same body.
Great advice. I see it so often wrong. I have a very funny clip. I don't have it in the podcast today, and it's 3 guys on the bridge on customs looting the same airdrop on the middle of the bridge, and I can just like click, 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 and I can literally put them down in a matter of a second. And I'm like, why are these 3 guys standing on the bridge, not covering each other? They're all looting the same box. Why are you doing this, bro? It makes you such of an easy target.
Absolutely. You never want to do anything that means an opponent can take you out with 1 magazine.
Yes.
That is just the worst possible thing. But definitely, play that. Even if the opponent can see one of you, or it knows that there is a second person there, that thought in the back of their head was, oh, okay, well, I might be able to take out that one person that I can see, but that other person, I don't know where they've gone. They're going to drop me straight away. And some people, they'll take the shot anyway, because why not? But a lot of the time, that I guess the mental element of it,
the mindset, the mind games, perhaps.
Exactly right. So that that moment of hesitation, they might actually, you might be protecting your duo partner just by being there, just by not being on the same body, just by being nearby. So being able to cover one another is huge. Baiting. I'm sure we've all done that. Again, yes. the mind games of Tarkov, right?
They work so much better in a duo, right?
Oh, it absolutely does. And I could not count the number of times that I've been running through D2 or, one of those other, like even in Fortress or Armory or whatever you want to call it on customs. And I've come across another player and we've both kind of heard each other at the same time, but we're not really sure. And I'll say to my duo partner, someone's here, I'm going to run away. I'm just going to run. I'm going to make it sound like I've panicked and I'm scared and whatever, and I need to get out of here. And I'll do that. I will bolt in the other direction. And what happens is that player will either try and pop out to get a shot at me as I run away, or they'll go, oh, maybe it's a new player and they're scared and they're trying to escape.
Yeah.
And there you go. And there's my duo partner standing there ready, waiting for them. Being able to do stuff like that is huge.
I agree.
Same thing. That kind of ties into the point around ambushing. You can corral people into an area, and I don't know if this is just an OCE thing or not, but taking a big gun or a second gun. So I did capturing outposts, for example, and I did it down at Shoreline, and I'm sure a lot of us who have played for a little bit or are going for Kappa and that kind of thing have felt the pain of capturing outposts.
I think we all have, man.
Very difficult quest. Yeah, and the thing is, there's a lot of mind games to that as well. And I spent a very long time trying to complete that on Shoreline, and then I was talking with Lionheart, who Cringy mentioned earlier, and he went, "Look, I'll come along." He goes, I'll come along with you, right? And I'll come down to the pier." And he goes, "I'm going to bring a whole bunch of grenades." He goes, "I'm going to bring a pistol. I'm going to bring an AK." And what he did is, I went down onto the pier and I sat there behind the blue fence, sitting there waiting. And Lionheart ran around the pier, throwing grenades, firing the pistol, shooting the AK. He simulated a battle down there, and sure enough, what happened? These
people show up
down going,
yep, they show
something's
up
going on at the pier. Let's go down there. And the moment they did, I just drilled them, and that's how I got capturing outpost started. It's great. Being able to do things like that is huge. Yeah. And again, if you've got more than one player, you can carry more than one player's worth of gear. So I'm sure we've all been in the situation where we've gone in and we've used all of our CMS, if you're a CMS enjoyer, and gone, "Oh, damn it, I've got a black leg and I'm running out of painkillers." Being able to turn around and say, "Hey, do you have a spare serve kit?" Or, "I've fired far too many bullets today. Can I borrow some ammo?" and stuff like that. Being able to do that kind of thing is very, very, very helpful, particularly in those longer ones. And I can name so many reserve runs where we've gotten 25 minutes in, the player scavs are starting to spawn. I've got 4 empty mags in my rig. My gun durability is down to like 75 at this point, and it's jammed 4 times and things like that. Knowing that I can rely on a teammate to cover for me, as well as give me a bit of a chop out when it comes to ammo and meds and all that lovely stuff. So
Definitely.
yeah, it makes a big difference. And I guess for a lot of the newer players, the biggest thing as well is quests. And it's not just having 2 people approaching a quest. Like, it's always great when you jump in and you go, "Okay, we're going to customs. I've got to go and do this, or I've got to go to reserve, and I've got to go and do check RBST or whatever it might be." You have the support of a duo partner, so you're both approaching the same objective. You're both thinking about the same thing. You are more in tune in that moment than you will likely ever be as a duo player. You also have the opportunity to help each other. Obviously, we can't drop keys and things like that anymore. But if you've got a team that you play with, or a regular duo, or if one of you, let's say, again, if you're doing disease history on reserve, so you need RBKSM and RBSMP, being able to go, "Okay, how about you buy SMP and I'll buy KSM, and then we'll both go on to reserve and we'll get disease history done." That
I do that every wipe.
Team play is such exactly.
There's like these 1 or 2 guys that I play with, and we always communicate which keys we got, so that we can go into raids together to get those quests done of the most expensive keys, so we don't have to spend millions to buy every key that we're just not going to use after that anymore. And having that help with quests. But I think even better is if I have to hide that annoying marker at Shoreline Resort at the medical box, and I have to sit there alone. I feel so much better sitting there, having some of my teammate just scope out the area and be able to reply or respond to any action or shots that will be sent my way. It feels me more confident and comfortable in a lot of quest situations.
For sure.
Right. I think a lot of advantages of the duo, but I think we also have a lot of disadvantages of duo. Cringy, what do you think are the disadvantages of playing in a duo compared to playing solo, of course?
Well, yeah, there definitely is some disadvantages, as you got there. Sound being one of them. When you're playing by yourself, you know that all the audio you're hearing, if you're not moving at the time, is an enemy player or an AI. Also playing in a duo, your duo, they're making noise, you're making noise. If you're in different areas, that's noise further spread out across the map. The reserve bunker is a really good example.
Oh yeah, definitely.
If one of us is playing close to King and one of us is playing close to the drop down side, they can hear audio on either side of that, and they can tell that there's people down there. So yeah, when you're making twice the amount of audio as a solo player, it definitely gives them a bit of an advantage that there's more audio cues for them to work with, for sure.
Do you ever find yourself in a situation that you rely on your teammate too much, perhaps?
You definitely do, especially if you're having a bad day. If I'm having some really bad raids, you kind of do tend to start using your teammates as like a crutch. Like if I'm just getting absolutely smoked all day, I'll just be like, "Oh, okay, Afraid, you go, off you go, mate. You push through this doorway this time," and I'll kind of just sit back and hold the right angle and look for those little picks that I'll just send Afraid off, or Lion or Trent or whoever I'm playing with at the time, and I'll just send them on their way to go and start wiping lobbies. And I just hope that when they're fighting, one of the people pushes back towards me and I get that little one bullet kill because, Afraid's dumped 3 mags into the man and he's hobbling around with one arm and a leg, and I basically just get to throw a rock at him and he falls over, and I'm like, oh, that's my name on the dog tag, Afraid. That's my kit. All right, thank you very much. I killed him. So yeah, you definitely do rely on your teammates from time to time. But sometimes that's a good thing, sometimes it's a bad thing. Like, it's really good to be able to rely on your teammates. But then obviously it can become a bad thing as well when you start relying on them too much and you kind of forget how to play by yourself, or you start making mistakes because you think that they would have done that previously. But then that just comes back down to communication with your team.
Definitely. Do you have sometimes that you're in a raid with maybe Afraid or someone else that you're like, oh man, like that communication is doing me worse instead of better?
100%. There's definitely been times there where, like, for example, because we're so confident playing with each other, we sometimes will split up, so we won't stick with each other's side. I may come in from like ice cream side of dorms, but Afraid will be like, "Oh, I'm going to push around the back. I'm going to come up vehicle side." And then I might think that I'm hearing something as I'm pushing into dorms on my end, but Afraid's talking about something that's happening on that side of dorms, and then you miss an audio cue because Afraid was explaining an audio cue, and then I die to my audio cue because Afraid was talking about his audio cue. And sometimes it can be an issue, but there's one of the things that you will get to, and when you work as a pair or even a trio as well, you will learn that you don't have to communicate every single thing, and you can keep it short and sweet and still give out this, like, there's a perfect amount of communication. You can underdo it and you can overdo it. And that is a mistake that a lot of people will make, is that they overdo their communication.
It will get you killed.
Something as simple as 2 in elbow. I know straight away then that Afraid has pushed car side. He's come up the stairs and he has heard 2 people down the corner in the elbow. That's all he has to say, and then I can clear my level, and then they're stuck in the elbow and we slaughter them.
I think we have some great example clips as well for that later where something like that happens. So we're definitely going to discuss that a little bit more. I want to talk about, before we start with anything like flanking, comms, like the really important things of how to improve as your duo or what to think about. I think we need to start with synergy, right? Afraid, how is your synergy with Cringy?
I think we've both got enough hours together that we kind of sort of know how the other will play, but understanding that if say we're playing on woods, I know that if Cringy has gone in with a bolt action, he's going to be playing the longer lines and things like that. He'll be thinking about getting up to a high vantage point and really playing that out. If he's gone in with an RFB, then I know that he's also going to be chasing things a lot closer, meaning that I'm one of those weird people that runs with a Reese and Gazelle onto woods, because I like to get up close and personal. And I know that if Cringy has gone in and he's running that RFB, he's going to be right next to me, or he won't be very far behind if he's trying to get the longer angle picks. Whereas if he's running with a bolt action, I know that I can rely on him for Overwatch support. So let's say we're pushing into med camp, I'll definitely make sure that if he's got that bolt action, I will move around the outskirts of the med camp a lot first before doing the push in. So I'll be trying to figure out, where are they? Is there something that I can do to, I guess, create an opportunity for Cringe to get a shot on, before just charging straight in. Whereas if we're both geared and we're both in like CQB type setups, then I'll be thinking more about, okay, well, one of us is going to move up via concrete and the other one might come in from, the front entry and things like that. So you kind of have to think about not only the gear that you're using, you need to think about what your teammate is using and what
Definitely.
that might mean for their play style. So that is a very, very huge thing, and it can change, raid to raid. I'm sure if you end up being squad wiped, or you happen to die and you change your kit up, just revisit it. When you've got a lot of hours down with a particular duo, you kind of get a feel for what they're going to do, and you sort of know where they are and where they're at. But if it's a newer duo or someone that perhaps you're a little bit less comfortable with, have a talk about it. What gun are you taking in? Okay, cool. That's great. You're running in with an MP7. I know you're not going to be sitting up on a hill sniping. You're going to be down there wanting to get into the action. So that is a huge thing to get around. And I guess understanding their playstyle and how they work in that kind of situation.
Definitely.
So, there's a lot of people, they might go in with a CQB style of kit, but there's also a very big difference between, the types of players that will do things like, let's say someone is in a room, right? For me, I'm usually running a large capacity magazine or something with pretty good recoil. The way that I will breach a room is I'll pre-fire it. I'll just walk in with the trigger pulled, right? And that's the way that I do it. Whereas there are other CQB players that will do things like they will open with a grenade and things like that. And understanding what your teammate is going to do in that situation is going to be really important, because me shift Wing in with the trigger pulled while Cringy's throwing a grenade into the room, that's never going to go well.
You need to time that shit. You need to build that synergy there, right? Like with timing and comms and how you're going to call it out and all that.
Yeah, absolutely. And like Cringy mentioned, it has to be very short to the point calls. Like, you can't plan the entire raid out before you go in. That's never going to happen. But you're also listening for, okay, what is my teammate doing? They may not have said, oh, I'm about to throw a grenade in there, but if they suddenly move back and you hear their gun go down, you're like, okay, they're doing something. I'm not going to rush into the room right now. Being able to understand the types of plays that your teammate will make, looking at the kit that they're running, understanding the situation that you're in, what the last call outs have been, that kind of thing is absolutely huge. The being able to, I guess, call out where you are too. In Cringe's example, he was saying after a while you do get very good at that non-verbal communication.
Yes,
you do
it's
get
super
understanding
important.
how you both absolutely and knowing how the other person is going to approach a situation is huge. What you want to try and get to is you want to try and get to the point where you say a single word, or one or two words, like I'm blah in a location. So I know Cringy's calls on woods are just on point. If he says I'm PvP, I know exactly where he is, or I'm Gypsy, I know exactly where he is. Like, it doesn't need any more than that. It's not going to be, I know where he's been, I understand where he's moving to. So if he's been at med camp and he says I'm PvP, well then I know that he's probably heading over towards Tent Rock or something in that direction, or he might be going up to cabins, because that's where I normally see Cringy moving to from there. If he does something different, he'll call it out with a very quick I'm lower gray or lower red or something like that. You want to try and keep it as succinct as you possibly can.
Yeah, I think that's also really important, right? Like to communicate what your teammate couldn't know else. Like, obviously you can take non-verbal from in-game, you don't need to communicate some things, but I think it's super important to do communicate what the other player can't possibly know without that comm, right? I think that's a super important rule that you'll have to try to implement in your communication style, I guess.
Yep, and little things as well, like surface changes are very important too, because I'm sure we've all heard, some metal noise or broken glass or tiles or something, and because it's an out of the ordinary noise, it's not the usual ambient or background noise, you would immediately go,
yeah,
what was that?
Who's that wood? Who's that wood?
Exactly.
We have all had that, for sure. It's important, I agree.
Yeah. And that's right. So being able to say something like, I'm on wood, or it was me on metal, or just something very, very clear. Because one of two things. Well, there's several advantages to doing that. One is you've been able to give a very, very clear call out on your own position without having to say, "Oh, I'm in elbow. I'm moving over
I'm
towards
in
214."
two-story, this part of the hallway. Yeah. I agree.
Exactly. The moment you say wood was me, you know
Perfect.
exactly where they are.
Yep.
But also, you know that, okay, well, there's probably not an opponent in that area. Or even if there is, and one of us goes down, you immediately know where they were and where they were likely shot from. So having those very clear, concise, pointed comms, communicating where you are and what you're doing, is super, super important. And the more that you do it, you'll find the less you need to do it.
And the better you get at it.
Will start to... Exactly right. Because if you're talking and your teammates are talking, I'm sure we've all run in a 5-man before. Everyone's talking at one another and it's all just an absolute ruckus. And then all of a sudden one person sits there and manages to drop 2 or 3 out of your team because you haven't heard them, because everyone's in Discord chatting away. And,
yeah, definitely.
And everything else. It's, communication and keeping the comms as clear as you can without losing the quality of communication is really important.
I think it's super important even. All right, I'm going to ask a bit of a tricky question then, perhaps so cringy. Is there people that you do not have synergy with?
Well, I mean, yeah, there definitely is, especially like prime example being a Sherpa ticket. I'm playing with a new player who may only have, 5 hours in the game. They don't know any of the callouts. They don't know any of the building names. And so you're trying to give them callouts, and they have no idea what's happening. So
yeah, they're just looking at you in game, right?
Yeah, and they're just like, I don't know what that means. Another thing that I found was an issue at the start when we were first doing it. Just recently, the Nation versus Nation tournament was on. When we first got together as a group and we started practicing customs, we all had different callouts. Afraid and I had the same callouts, and Azura had different callouts to us, and then Crackbabe had even different callouts to the 3 of us. So yeah, it depends on when you're playing with people from different regions. It can definitely affect the synergy, because I could say a callout, for example, that a group of the people that I play with, for example, if I was to say I'm at purple, there is a small group of people who know exactly what that means.
I have no clue where purple is. I have absolutely no idea.
You have no clue where purple is, and that affects the synergy. And
I agree.
So it's not the fact that I have bad synergy with people. It's more the fact of I have good synergy with a smaller group of people.
Yeah, because of time put in, right?
And hours in.
I agree.
So, like Trent, for example, I would be comfortable playing with Trent in a duo raid, and we weren't even on Discord, because I have played, not even over exaggerating, probably 2,500 hours with Trent.
So that, like, you don't...
Half the time he knows what my next move is before I've even made that move.
Well, that's the point of synergy you want to obtain or achieve at some point,
exactly,
right?
Exactly right.
I agree.
And I've started getting to that point with like Afraid and Lionheart as well, and but I don't think you have like, obviously you're going to bump into people that you're not going to gel with, and sometimes you just have to realize that I just don't think we make a good duo team. But everything can get better with time.
Yes, for sure.
If you're willing to put the hours in as a duo or a trio or whatever size group you want to play, you will get better at that. If you're a solo player playing 500 hours solo, you're going to get better at solo, and you may struggle as a duo. 500 hours as a duo, you're going to be really good in that situation, but you might not be very good solo. And I think you can make anything work. You might start off with bad synergy, but you can definitely make it better. I don't think bad synergy is the end of anything. You can definitely just work on it.
I definitely agree. All right, I have a great clip that I think shows off great synergy by 2 players as an example. Let's put it on the big screen here. Hold on. So we're seeing here Mr. Fuzzy, the guy that raided us earlier. And he's playing together with Ralph, and they're going into the bunker. So we're just going to play it first. And then I want to get your comments on it and see what you guys picked up from this, what we could potentially learn from this, and what is really good here, and what might be not really good here as well. All right. I think that shows some great synergy. What do you guys think?
That was pretty flawless there. I'm gonna be honest. That was really good. Short and precise comms, calling out their exact plays to each other, knowing how to work with each other. So he pushed to the stairs, and the moment he pushed to the stairs, he pushed to the doorway. Asking if he needed the nade or anything like that. That was really, really good synergy there. But thing that I would note there is the short and precise comms.
Yes.
More players Bishop.
Yes.
That was all that was needed for his friend to be like,
he
okay,
panics a little bit with the bishop.
And look here. This is it. Some people, they just start talking and talking. Oh, there's people coming for a bishop. I think there's this many. There's this, there's that, there's this. You don't need that. You just need more players Bishop.
Yeah, they kind of improve on it, right? Later on, because
and look at it.
He says like pushing later, and then his teammate said behind you, like as a com, like I'm at your 6. So it definitely improves on the last bit. And I think the last bit is a perfect example of how you can play really close together and turn a fight that kind of is a stalemate. The player's standing towards water, right? And then his teammate throws the nade, which makes the opponent have to play or do something. They decide to push, and Fuzzy is already waiting for the guy, of course, knowing that he could potentially do that. And it's just basically I wouldn't say an easy kill, but a very well executed team play to get the second guy here. So definitely
absolutely
something you can do well.
And to add to that as well, the thing that we were talking about earlier, that when you play with someone enough, you do start to understand how the other person is going to play. Very early on, when they were still in the middle, in the center of D2 there, how one went, oh, do you want me to nade?
Yeah.
And I think Fuzzy was already nading. They both knew, and that was not just coincidental. They both knew that they needed to get to the bishop end of D2. And the way that they had to do that is they needed to make sure that whoever was at the end, they needed to get them off that right-hand peak. If they had tried to make that move while someone was sitting there crouched, ready to lean out and take a shot at them, then they were both going to go down. They knew they needed to drop a grenade on that point, and they've obviously played together enough that they went, I'm already doing that. I know what you're thinking. That nade is going over there, and we're both about to push. And even though I think it was Fuzzy that we're watching here, he went straight to the left-hand side and moved across. But you can actually hear his duo partner doing the exact same thing. Maybe not moving quite as far, but also making that same play together. And that was all entirely non-verbal, based on the throwing of that grenade.
Yeah, it's also funny that you say that, because his teammate calls out like, "Oh, I need to pack max," and then I think straight after him saying that, he realizes like, I don't have time to pack max here. We need to push together here. And he that's his thought process, just being like, oh, Fuzzy is already going there. This is not the time for me to pack max. I have to push. And it ends up that he's not even shooting the gun anymore, but they can only execute this because there's 2 of them. If Fuzzy was alone here, this would have been a different play, right? So I think it's very important for his teammate to like get all those things in this like 1 minute fight, because I think they're fighting like 4 players or something here, so it's definitely interesting to see that. All right, let's continue a little bit. I think we're gonna touch on one of the most important topics here that there is, and it's communication, right? You guys both touched on it a little bit already. I think communication is super important and key to winning fights and also surviving raids together with your duo. I think to improve your communication, you need to understand a base understanding, or like have a baseline basically of what you want and want not to communicate, perhaps. For me personally, I think one of the best things to work on if you're getting better is how to call out an enemy location or opponent, right? I do not know if you guys have a special way for that, but I think it's super important to call out an opponent when you spot someone, right? Of course, knowing the map makes it a lot easier. If you guys know the same callouts, if you guys know all the callouts on every map together, that makes it easy. But sometimes you're also in that situation where maybe there is not a specific callout. So especially on woods, or maybe outside on shoreline or lighthouse, or on dorms on the hill, like those are places that perhaps you cannot give a very distinctive callout that everyone exactly knows where it is. So what my best practice is in a lot of those situations is I give either a distance or a direction. So for example, I say there's a player in the woods towards dorms, and then at least my teammate knows which direction they need to be looking at, right? Because if I'm gonna say I see a player next to the tree, that's gonna be absolutely, completely useless for my teammate. Because there's a trillion trees, they don't know where to look at. So something that you can do communicating opponents' locations out is give them a direction, right? And that goes for everything. Call out the direction of the next building, call out the location perhaps, or the north southwest. In my opinion, the compass can be really useful, but in a lot of situations, if you have to take out your compass, check out the position or the direction, it's already too late for a good play. So personally, I normally just use buildings. So on reserve, I use the buildings. Or lighthouse, I maybe use south or north. So instead of saying now south or north, I say towards the lighthouse, or towards the water treatment plant, or towards the villas. And you can use that as a very easy to understand direction, call out an opponent, and that makes your teammate at least able to look at the direction and spot them themselves, right?
Yeah, so we use, sorry to jump in there. One of the things that we use a lot is, and this is, I think it's a military background, but we use direction, distance, description. So 3D. So you might say direction wise could be any number of things. It could be dorms, it could be north, it could be, you know, something to that effect. You're kind of giving a rough direction, whatever you can give. Distance, so it might be towards dorms, 50 meters out. And then description would be 2 of moving left to right,
yes,
or something
like that. Thank you for noticing that.
within a few key things you're hitting those the 3Ds, and you've given enough detail that anyone hearing that will be able to piece together at least approximately where they are, but also be able to make some other decisions. Like if it's a 2-man or a 3-man or whatever it might be, you might go, oh, I feel like I might be a little bit exposed to that. So you might duck in behind a tree, re-rally yourself. Whereas if it's a solo, you might go, oh, okay, I might be able to get a pick here and try and stand off against them anyway. So yeah, very, very clear comms. And I find that format works very well.
Yeah.
Because you can do it very quickly.
And it's nice that you noticed that. It's something that I think is missing at a lot of players. It's calling out which direction the opponent is moving, right? Being that from left to right, from right to left, or towards you or away from you. People can move really fast, of course, in this game. If they're running, their position might change from the moment you're calling it out to the moment that your teammate can look through their scope that way. And if you let your teammate know which way they are moving, it makes it so much easier to find that player if they are moving. Like, if it's left to right, you know that you have to look from left to right to find the player, and you're not gonna look behind you like, oh, maybe he went to the left of me, right? So I think that's super important, and something I miss in a lot of communications from other players. It's just gonna be like, I see a player at dorms, and then it's like, okay, yes, great, man. Is he at the right side of dorms? Is he at the left side of dorms? Is he going up the stairs? Is he coming toward us, running out of dorms? I think it's super important that you start like trying to communicate which way or direction the opponent is heading. I think that's super important. Do you guys call out the amount of players straight away?
We try to.
So do you say at least one, or do you say I see two, or do you say multiple?
We try to be as precise as we can, but we never try. We don't want to be wrong, so we don't want to say, "Oh, there's 3," and then all of a sudden there's 5. So if we're not certain,
Kinda
we're
tricky.
like, "Okay, there's multiple coming." But yeah, you always want to call out as many as you can see, because you don't want your teammate, especially if you're playing split, you don't want to be like, okay, I see one, and then, for example, because if I said, oh, there's one pushing from hill 1 to dorms, I know straight away Afraid is going to go to the nearest window, or yeet himself out the door, or do some sort of parkour jump, and Afraid is going to go and try to murder that man.
Yes.
That's what Afraid does. So I don't want to be too afraid. Oh, okay, there's one on his way, and then Afraid's like, oh, yep, time to go and kill this dude. And then Afraid walks out the door, and there's 3 people standing on hill 1 staring at him. So you definitely want to call out the amount of players, because depending on how many players is, you're gonna play the situation differently. So you definitely want to call out the amount of players as accurately as possible. Give them a direction which way they're moving. Another good tip is to use 2 different landmarks. So, for example, if I was on top of construction on dorms and I seen a 3-man pushing from Smugglers to Hill 1, I would say to Afraid, there's 3 crossing from Smugglers to Hill 1, and Afraid would know that means they've just come up the hill from Smugglers Boat, they're crossing over the road, and they're coming towards the hill before dorms, to which then Afraid could position himself to get into a situation where he wants to fight.
Oh, super important, definitely. It makes it very easy for you to not only understand where your opponent is, but perhaps make a play even without seeing the enemy straight away, right?
And
All right,
there's also a factor in there as well, where having trust and confidence in your partner's knowledge and skill. So I know for a fact Cringy has made calls before where he said, I've seen one, but I think there's more. And it's little things like, if you're running in a group, you see a lot of people, they get that real boost of confidence if they're in a large group, and they'll hard charge from A to B and that kind of thing. Whereas a solo player moves a little bit slower, they stay to the outside, they try and make sure they got a wall to their back or something like that. So you kind of go, the way that person's moving, I think they're a solo, or the way the person is moving with like that much confidence,
there has to be more. Yeah.
And so I know that if Cringy makes a call going, I've seen one, but I think there's going to be more, I know that person is obviously moving in a particular way, or they're geared in a particular way, and there is a pretty good chance that there will be more than one, or that it might be a solo if that's the way that it's played out.
Definitely agree with that one. I think something else that's really important is sometimes to communicate what you are doing yourself. That might be not as transparent, right? So, for example, if you're getting shot bad and you need to heal, or you need to CMS even, or put a splint on, or pull a stim, I think sometimes it's super important to call that out to your teammate, like, I need to heal, or I need to fix my thorax, or whatever, because if I think my teammate is completely healed up, I might decide like, okay, I'm gonna push them, right? While in the same situation, when my teammate needs to heal and he goes in a room in dorms, for example, like, that might decide me not to push them and just hold the angle for a second so that my teammate can heal up a little bit better and we can take the fight as a 2-man instead of me running as a 1-man army while my teammate is dying inside of a room, right? So it's small things like that, like reload, packing max, healing. That is sometimes super important to communicate to your teammate so that your teammate can decide what they're gonna do based on that, right? And I think we've already touched it a little bit earlier, but no, you have to communicate things that your teammate cannot now know without you saying it, right? There's just certain things, like, I don't know, maybe a stupid example is like, my mouse isn't working, or like, oh, I'm out of ammo, right? Like, you cannot guess that from your opponent. It's super important that you call things like that out so your teammate can play on it, and you can really play something together instead of just 2 solos doing their own thing, right? It's the same with pushing, man. Like, if you're both gonna push on the same moment and you do not communicate it, you might end up in a really awkward situation where you're just both running in a hallway. You're like, oh yeah, who's going first? So especially in CQB, I think that matters a lot more. Like you need to communicate when you're throwing nades, when you're gonna flank or not. We'll touch on the flanking a little bit later. Do you guys? I want to ask you guys a question. When you guys call out for help, do you do that very often? And if so, what do you expect from the help? Do you give like specific call out for it? Do you just say help, need help? What's your guys' rules on that?
I don't know that there's necessarily hard and fast rules. It's one of those things that I think is kind of developed over time,
Oh,
just in the
true.
way that we all play. So again, knowing where each other are, and knowing where the opponents might be, if there is a call for help, I know if I make that call, whoever I'm playing with, whether it be Cringy or Lion or Trent, they'll generally make a move to wherever I am. But I need to make sure that whatever I do from that point, I'm feeding them as much information as I can. So that might be, oh, I'm pinned down here, I'm stuck here, they're moving in there, they're grenading me, they're whatever it might be. You've basically got to allow them to do an encouraged flank in reality, because what you're not there to do is you don't want to feed your teammate into an ambush situation. You want to still try and go, well, it's a desperate time. Like I'm calling out for help here, but you want to set them up for success as much as you can. And a lot of the time that might be a big rotate. It might even just be putting pressure on. It might be making noise, so they might go, oh, okay, well, I now need to back off a little bit, or, force a play or whatever it might be. If you're calling for help, it needs to have a very clear direction to it.
Yes, and don't do it like, every fight, maybe. I have that one guy that literally calls out help at the second he gets in the team fight. He's like, I hope there's a 2-man right here. And I'm like, yeah, okay, bro. And then the next fight, he's like, oh, there's a guy next to me. I'm getting shot. Help. And I'm like, okay, but like we're playing a game. You're getting shot. It's a given. Like you need to give me a help call out if you really need it, right? Because in my opinion, if someone calls out for help, that might mean that I'm going to push a little bit faster, or it means that I'm gonna put up a little bit more aggressive, like pressure thing, right? So
exactly,
it's important that you use that help as a last call out, perhaps, like as a something like you need to do something for me, please. But
definitely, and you need to have confidence in your teammates that if you call for help, they'll do it. And that's why, myself personally, like if I'm playing with someone and they call for help, I've got the blinkers on. Like that's it. The red mist has come down, my blinkers are on, and I'm going to wherever they need to be, and I'm listening for the follow-up call outs. But I can't sit there and be like, oh, you're in trouble. Oh, well, that's so sad for you. I'll see you back in the lobby. Yeah. Because the moment one of you goes down, you've immediately lost the edge that you had as a duo.
Yeah.
So you need to do whatever you can to try and keep your team working.
Oh, definitely. And I mean, it can be very simple, right? Like sometimes I'm just gonna shoot bullets when my teammate says it. Maybe not even to have the idea that I'm gonna kill the opponent with it, but very often if you start shooting, I will guarantee you the opponent will not push into your teammate when you're literally shooting bullets at them. Like even if it's their general direction, like it's something as suppressive fire that can work really well in situations to help your teammate do something, being it putting their Saliwa on their thorax, fixing a splint, doing a painkiller because they're doing something, right? Like just knowing how you can help your teammate and when you can help your teammate is I think super strong in duos. Also something really important, maybe looked over very often. I think we all know that one teammate that goes absolutely ham when they die, right? And it's like, oh, this is... and they start shouting all these things, but I think very often they forget that you're still in that fight, right? So in my opinion, it's really important, or at least I do this myself sometimes too. We all do it in Tarkov sometimes, but if you really want to get good at communication, you need to call out when you die, where you died to, or what you died from, maybe what type of ammo, and maybe what the last position of your opponent was, and or where you died perhaps if you don't know, or a general direction, like got shot from the right, I died to the left, I died to a nade, whatever. And then you need to mute actually if you really want to be helpful to your teammate. I think that's what a lot of people are forgetting. They're just gonna ramble on like about all the bullshit that happened to them in a second, while their teammate is like trying to do something, and now suddenly they're all at their own and they need to clutch it up. So definitely something I would advise any players Also feel free to call your teammates out on that. Like, I do it sometimes. I'm just rambling about the game and my teammate is gonna shout like comms, and they're like, okay, then I know, okay, he shouted comms. Oof, I need to mute. I need to shut the fuck up right now.
We yell at each other all the time.
Yes, same.
One of us will die, and we start having a meltdown because we've died to desync, we've made a mistake that we know we shouldn't have made, and then we're angry at ourselves, so we start ranting. Myself especially, as people would have seen during NVN, I get quite annoyed at myself very, very quickly.
I'm the same, man. I'm the same.
There has been many times where I've died and I start losing my mind, and a phrase like comms. I'm still trying to kill them. Like, do you want me to get your stuff for you? Like, I need to hear. And I'm like, oh. And then you go muted, and then your teammate either clutches up and gets your gear, and you're like, okay, it's insured, you can dump it, or they die too, and then you both unmute, and you just sit there and yell at each other and at the game, and
and
try to blame one another and do what you need to do to.
And I think it's definitely good. Like, if they're asking you questions like, "Where's your body exactly?" or "Did you know what ammo killed you?" Of course, you can reply to it, or like, but in general, sound can be super important in this game, and there's nothing more important than that one teammate that's just rambling on in your headphones while you're trying to fight this 2-man, right? Yeah. So definitely more
it's
important.
A really good point. Yeah, and look, playing it from the other side as well, that 10 seconds after you go down or your teammate goes down is really important. Like, as a solo player, if I'm fighting a group, the approach that I take and many others take is you try and break every fight into a 1v1.
Yes.
It might be a 3v1, but you're trying to make it a 1v1. And I can always tell as a solo player when the other person is having a meltdown on Discord, because I'll take someone out and, I might be Swiss cheese at that point, but they haven't immediately pushed me. Like, they have to know that I'm very hurt, but they've given me time to pop an ETG. They've given me time to re-PK. I've managed to reload my gun all in that time. If they've given me that time, I'm back in the fight. You guys are screwed up by not communicating. Like, as if he had said, he's here, he's hurt, go get him, I'd lost that fight every time.
You're going to lose it every time. I think the best sign to check if you're fighting a duo yourself as a solo player and you kill one of them, and absolutely nothing changes in the gameplay of the duo, and they're just gonna keep on pushing, keep on shooting, keep on doing what they were doing already, I think that's a sign like, hey, these guys have good comms, they know what they're doing. Like, the death of their teammate didn't affect their play, right? Or I think that's very important. You touched on it a little bit. It's maybe not really communication, but one of the strong things that you can apply as a duo against others is that you have two guys to put pressure on, right? Like, you every shot counts towards the solo because there's two of you and there's one of the guy, or maybe there's two on the other side, but use that in your advantage, right? Like, if you're a really strong duo, you should never get yourself in the 1v1 situation for the solo, I'd say. But we'll get on that a little bit. The flanking, there's definitely a point about flanking that we'll touch on in a little bit. I have one clip for you guys to look at. It's really interesting because it says us something about healing, but it also says us something about why it can be super strong to hold an angle while your opponent is doing something. Let me grab this clip for you guys. All right, here we go. I'm gonna play it first, and then we can reply on it and play it over another time later. All right, I played it again without the sound on. Initial comments, boys?
So that was an excellent play by, I guess, everyone involved, realistically, right?
Yes.
The initial hits on, he heard him going up and healing and immediately pushed, and it was a good play. If he was a solo, then that might have been a very different
probably an easy
situation.
Kill.
But
yep.
Yeah, I mean the initial panicked call out was probably not a lot to go on, but you can see that there was that immediate response. He stopped what he was doing. He stopped
Yeah, he's
looting.
looting
He
right now,
immediately
right?
put himself into it. Yeah, yeah, and he immediately jumped into a position that would allow him to hold a defense. He's moved into that right hand peak. He sat there and he's tried to get more information. His teammate has communicated that he's in a bad way and he needs to heal. And he'd moved himself to cover, knowing that he had that cover from his duo partner. And when the opponent just came charging up the stairs, yeah, he fed
It
himself
was
into it. It was
game
really
over
well
from
played.
that point, right? Yeah, definitely. I agree. I think it's a great example of when like you can use the duo really in your advantage in many ways. Like at first it's really bad, right? Like the guy is shot, he needs to heal apparently badly. He needs to fix heavy bleeds, for example, or fix his thorax. But it's really interesting to see here that they actually turn a bad situation, like I'm almost dead, but they turn it into a really good situation because they kill their opponent in a really easy way, so to say. So I think that's definitely something that you can apply as a duo way more than you can as a solo. You can turn these situations in your advantage and making them really well executed if you do this more often. So I thought it was a good clip there. Of course, is there anything we've missed about communication, boys? Have we missed anything?
No, I don't think so. One thing I would add to that though, and it's one thing that I learned off Afraid. We kept on having this issue where, for example, I would say one dead, and Afraid would hear I'm dead, or
Yeah.
Trent would hear I'm dead. So what we've started saying now is minus.
Yes,
So
good one.
if there's 3 players in dorms and we're fighting, and I hear Afraid being like 1 minus, 2 minus, I know that there's only 3 left, and we only pretty much say dead now when it's one.
You're actually dead.
It was getting confusing because I'd be like, oh, 1 dead, and Afraid's like, you're dead. Where are you dead? And I'm like, no, he's dead. And then you're just going back. You're just filling up the communication with stuff that isn't needed to be there at that very moment. And that's the one tip I'd give is just that, using minus or killed or something like that instead of using dead for both situations.
Yeah. I think you made a good point. I didn't really use that until I started playing with Millsy, which is a UK player. And he was like, bro, you're saying that so often, like shut it and just say minus. I started to implement it with some people. The only problem is sometimes when you're playing with people that don't know that call out, they're like looking at you like, minus what? Are we doing mathematics here or something? Like, what's the point here? But I've been starting to implement it more and more often, and it actually works like a charm in good situations and avoids a lot of confusion in comms. I like to add there that we all have that one friend that already will communicate to you like, oh, I'm dead, and then, oh, I'm not, I'm actually still alive, and then there's gonna be a nade, and they're like, oh, there's a nade, I'm gonna be dead, I'm dead, and they're like, oh, I'm still alive. And that's also something that you can avoid with it a little bit, because there's nothing more frustrating than someone that like thinking your teammate is dead and then suddenly they're not dead, right? Like they just come back from the death.
It's very, very confusing.
Yes.
Now, with that being said, one of the things that that I think our group does very well is the I may be dead here, because it's, they've had a grenade land near them or something like that has happened, because even though it might seem a bit negative and pessimistic and whatever else, I know that whatever I'm doing, I need to be thinking about, if my partner goes down, I have 15 seconds to get a conversion on whoever has just taken them out. There will be a moment where they're trying to think, oh, have I just killed this person? What's going on? And that is my window to make a move. Now, I know that they haven't gone down yet, but being able to think about, the next step or the step after that or whatever it might be, having that information is key, right?
Definitely. I think it's the way you say or communicate something that could make a big difference, right? Like if someone says to me, I may be deaf, or oh, I'm deaf, that's like a huge difference in how I'm gonna perceive that and maybe even act on that. And I think that's a red line we see throughout all of the communication things that we are explaining and like explaining what we're doing. It's about how you can really give information in a short and precise way for your opponent to be usable instead of being confusing. No one likes confusion in a team fight. And as you said as well, I think we all want to know what happens in a Discord call of a 5-man when you start killing them one by one. I definitely would love to be in some of those Discord calls sometimes where you just know it's the confusion going on there. Especially when they start shooting each other, that's where the real fun starts normally.
Yeah.
All right, I think we're gonna move on to another really important thing. Cringy, positioning on your teammate. I think this is something that's really being forgotten or even ignored by a lot of people that play in teams. Maybe it comes a little bit more natural to some than others. I think the amount of hours and maybe the play styles that you have might come into play here a little bit. But what's your thought process and what's your rules about positioning around or next to your teammate?
So it's different because the way we play as a group, we don't really go in to. None of us really go in looking for a survive. I understand that that's the main idea of it, but a lot of the time when we're playing together as a group, we want to see numbers on the board. We want dog tags and we want people's loot. So we don't always stick together. Sometimes we will, like if, for example, if we're playing as a trio, I know this is mainly about duo, but if we're playing as a trio and we're attacking dorms, I will go, or Trent will go in like ice cream side of dorms on level 1. Afraid loves the window jump through into level 1. And so I may push up the staircase into level 2.
It's funny that you say that because I've prepared something that I didn't share with you guys necessarily. And it's exactly what we do when we play a duo. If we approach dorms, being it from the left or the right side, most often I'll go in ice cream bottom floor and my teammate jumps in the window there. So that's it's funny that you say that, but it's exactly what we do.
And because the way that we play, so it really depends on your group. Like you said, it really comes down to your play style, your hours played, and how you like to play the game. And so we try to cover ground. So instead of working together as a big group, pushing together as a 3-man, we like to cover ground. So if we go in a duo, like exactly like you just showed, one will go one side, one will go the other side. We then have audio from either side of dorms, and we can rotate and push and do different things depending on what's needed at the time. So prime example would be, I've come through ice cream side, I've cleared bottom, there's nothing, Afraid's gone up vehicle stairs, and he can hear people in elbow. So he'll open that door and he'll hold the right hand peek to see if they're coming from him, but then I'm in the interior stairs and I'm looking down the elbow. So I'm looking down the hallway, sorry. So I can see Afraid looking up the hallway to me. He can see me, I can see him. And then I can slowly but surely start pushing down, or he can start pushing in. And then he can get inside, close the door, and I'm holding that angle. And he knows that while he's trying to get in, they're not going to be able to push him because I'm going to be able to see them coming for him.
It's funny that you say that. I have a great clip to show something like that. If you give me a second, let me see where it is. We have so many clips today. Okay, I think here it is. Yeah, we have it here. So this is a clip of me and Snurlax, another Dutch player, and it's funny that you mentioned that, or you explained that situation, because exactly what you've told happened here. I went in ice cream bottom, my teammate went to car side, there was nothing on the bottom, my teammate calls out, he hears something above him, so that's going to be elbow. He rotates outside, goes up the car stairs, right? I go to the middle, I hold that angle, we know there's at least 2 here, and we can literally execute it perfectly from that point onwards, because we have them absolutely pinned from the start right away, right? They have nowhere to go but outside of the window. And if you communicate that with some good timing on when you are gonna peek exactly, this is what will happen. Nothing else to say, man. We'll play it again. Is there anything you guys would do different here?
Oh,
I feel
no,
like-
that worked. Oh, sorry, you go, Fred.
Sorry, I was saying, I feel like cringy. I feel like we've made this exact play several times together.
Yeah, 100% we have. That is our pretty much one of our go-to strats on clearing second story. The only thing that sometimes we would do different is if I was in your situation there at the internal stairs, what I like to do is to get a nade just off that pillar there
Oh
in
yeah.
the middle. Throw the nade down the hallway. It bounces off that little bit of a pillar and goes back into where everybody likes to sit up on those I think it's
On the
beds or
couch.
rubbish in
Yeah,
the corner.
couch and rubbish. Yeah, you're right.
And so I'll throw the nade down there. Afraid's safe down near that doorway, and he knows he can hear them because obviously you hear a nade anywhere near you, you panic and you start moving. And that gives Afraid audio cue straight away. So he knows, oh, they've heard the nade and they've pushed down the hallway deeper into Elbow. And then the moment that nade explodes, Afraid swings the right hand down the elbow and then I push up to back Afraid. And usually most of the time, by the time I get there, Afraid swung that corner and there's his body's in the floor.
I agree. I have another great example of me playing in a tournament as a solo, actually, but I come across a 3-man in dorms. Let me see if I can find the clip. Where are we? Yes, right here. It's funny that you give the example of being in Elbow, right? Because apparently it's a place that a lot of players want to sit in. So I'm gonna play here. It's a bit of a longer clip, bear with me. And they start talking in French, by the way, but I have no clue what they're saying. So I'm gonna pause it right here already. Is there something that you guys are noticing it already?
I think the first thing that stood out to me is that they're not really using that duo advantage.
It's a trio.
To get that rotation of them. There you go.
Yes.
Even more so. It's they're allowing themselves to be held from one angle. Which and to be fair, you play it well, you move out, you stay aggressive, you try and keep them on the back foot as much as you can. I did notice you moved up to 3rd floor just to make sure that no one was going to come down.
I was very afraid there was a guy on top, perhaps, right? Like waiting or something that was just gonna come down on me and I would not be able to reply on it. But they make it very easy for me here because I just have to look one angle. Like, I don't have to watch below, I don't have to watch my behind, I don't have to watch to my left, I just have to look forward and I can use the nade to my advantage as well. I'm not entirely sure, I think, on this point. I'm just gonna play it here further. That there's 3 of them, but I know there's at least 2. And they're not doing anything, they're just gonna sit there, right?
Mm-hmm.
It still is a bit different, of course, because they're with the 2 of them, and I'm just solo, so still have to watch out. But it's literally gonna be a peak battle from this point on, actually. So they throw the nade. Do you guys think that nade was good?
The way that it landed, like where they placed it, was good, but they did not capitalize on it at all.
No.
Yeah, they're not using that nade pushed you and made you uncomfortable, and they haven't used it to help them out in any sort of way at all.
If one of them would push
by
up,
this stage,
or maybe even like jumped out of the window to go to the bottom floor and flank me or something, like
100%.
I would have not been able to pick that up because I'm just thinking, oh, Nate, need to run, right? Like the best
by
thing.
this stage,
They could have done so many things. Yeah.
By this stage, one of us would have already left Elbow.
Yes.
One of us would have gone down the stairs, out a window, anywhere and either push to ice cream stairs on second level so that you would have been stuck getting shot from 2 different directions, or one would have pushed in front door to stop you from being able to come down the stairs, or we could have gone up ice cream stairs all the way to third, then came back down to put pressure on you from the top, where they're all just sitting there holding the corners and not utilizing their numbers.
I'm surprised. Well, I didn't know how it was going to play, but with the good placement of that nade, I can guarantee that I would have been up on that filing cabinet, the little locker there. There's a little mound right behind it, and you can stand over the top. And I know that would have protected me from the grenade. And the moment you peek that corner, because you've shown that every time you've come around, crouched and right peeking every single time.
But what else am I gonna do, right? Like, I think that's like, as long as they are not moving, what point does it make for me to flank? Because if I'm gonna flank myself here, that will give them the opportunity to go to different areas. So in my thought process here, it's if they want to stick there with the 3 of them and just having this fight in this one hallway, that's fine with me. Right? I have the strong position here, in my opinion. And I'm not gonna play a lot more of the clip because it's just gonna end up like a 5-minute fight here. I end up killing 2. I died to the last guy. But I think it's a really good example of how not to play dorms as a trio. There's so much opportunity for these guys. There's 3 of them. They have good gear. They have good ammo. It's just me. I'm next to the stairs. I'm not really watching my bottom or my top because I've cleared it a little bit. I've had no sign that they were doing anything like that. Like, there's just so many ways they could have killed me here, and they don't. It's a missed opportunity. So I think this was a great example of how not to play in a duo, basically. Right.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think having you could see that there was not a lot of the way they moved. You know, the only time they did anything as a group was when one of them crossed over into kitchen. And it could just be that they were a new team playing together, or they might have just met each other in an LFG group. But being able to build the confidence in your teammates, knowing that you can disengage from a fight, that you can rely on your teammates' comms to let you know if they've moved away, if they've moved up, back, down, wherever it might be, so that you can then make a play without having to have eyes on glass, without having to be watching where the opponent is really where the advantage of a duo, or in that case, a trio, comes into play.
Right, definitely. Do you have a rule on literally your positioning? Let's say you spawned, you're gonna cover some ground. Afraid, are you gonna be right in the backpack of Cringy, or where are you gonna be?
Look, like Cringy mentioned, we generally do a bit of a split right off the start, because with any raid, you know where the spawns are going to be. We know what the objective is. We know if we're going to, let's say we spawn in at Trailer Park on Customs, we know that we're probably going to go and try and fight around the medical building or over towards Fortress or something like that. I know that Cringy is going to immediately move over and try and get some shots across Ruaf, or watch for anyone crossing the main bridge. Usually I'll run into Big Red. So we kind of know each other's movement off the spawn. When it comes to moving into, let's say, a combat situation, the worst thing that I could ever do is crowd Cringy. I don't want to be in his pocket. I don't want to be sitting right behind him. First of all, it means that, if he's trying to make a peek around a corner or do something, if I'm standing there holding him out of that corner and he needs to move back because a nade's landed or he's taken a bullet or whatever it might be, I can't be there blocking that. I need to make sure that I'm using the fact that we're in a team to our advantage. The fact that we can have multiple angles. And I can't have multiple angles if I'm standing right next to him. I need to have moved on to something else.
Definitely agree with that. Something I try to do very often is I try to be on the right or the left side of my teammate. I think if you're just gonna be like, even if it's 5 or 10 meters just behind your teammate, it makes it really easy for an opponent to shoot you guys both down, because all they have to do is just keep shooting. But maybe even a little bit earlier, it makes it very easy to spot you guys both, because they look a certain direction and they see basically 2 players in most situations. So what I try to do a lot in basically every map, every situation, I try to have my teammate on the right or the left and be like maybe the same line, but like be 20 meters, 25 meters out of them, which gives me all the time to respond to CQB fights if necessary, but it also makes it so that I can maybe shoot the opponent straight after he starts shooting my teammate without them knowing that I'm there. It makes me able to pull a flank straight away if I want to, without them knowing like, oh, I see the duo running away to the right, he's on the right. So in generally speaking, I think building a line and like being on the left or the right of each other and moving up and going down or right or left together, that way works so much more better than being behind or even straight next to each other. It's only an easy target if you're going to be right next to each other, right?
Definitely.
I think there's really two ways how to play as a duo. And you guys said it again, you guys split, you play a bit far from each other, which relies a lot on communication and positioning, I think. Being able to have good call-outs, put some hours in together. There's definitely also something to be said of playing close together, right? Maybe in CQB situations, you need to play a little bit close, because if one's gonna be in East and one's gonna be in West, that could be really disadvantageous for you if there's a team that rolls up, right? I want to say it's better for players playing close if the situation comes for it, but you need to be able to give space to your opponent, as you said. Like, no one wants to be in the dorm's hallway and they have to run back for a nade that comes their way and their teammate is there blocking them, right? On the other hand, if you can play close together, like Fuzzy did in the first clip, they play very close together at the end, but they make it in their advantage because they throw the nade and they play on it, right? So my advice would be, in situations where you can play on being close together, use that to overrule your opponent. If not, try to split up a little bit more and give each other space and rely on that good communication and rely on your teammate to be able to do the 1v1 as well, right? I think that's really important.
And look, I think when it comes to, again, I know we're going to talk about this a little bit later on, but if it's a situation that you're perhaps less comfortable in, or it's a scenario that you haven't played that much, being close enough to be able to track your teammate with audio is also really important.
Yes.
So I know we're going to talk about Resort a little bit later on, and that's not a situation that we fight in a lot. Like, we're not Shoreline.
I was going to ask you guys this question, right? Like, how do you guys approach Resort, or how do you guys play Resort?
Yeah, so this is
the
a
best way to approach
situation.
Resort is don't.
All right, gotcha. Next question then. Topic. Okay.
But, no, look, with Resort, it's a great example, right? It's not an area that we play in a lot. Like, we know the call outs, but you talk to a lot of like Resort mains. Sorry, I say Resort mains because
just Shoreline
Resort
mains.
Deep down, we know Shoreline PvPers are actually just Resort mains, but a lot of them, they'll say, okay, I'm outside West 306, and I mean, I know where that is, but you can't always count on the person you're playing with knowing that level of a call out. So I find approaching Resort, we might move into it separately.
Yeah.
But we always end up regrouping. We always end up being near enough to one another. If you're in a combat situation, as in you have engaged, you've identified where the opponent is, you know what they're doing, that's when you might break away a little bit. But until that point, being very clear, again, it's coming down to that communication. If you can't very, very quickly and succinctly communicate where you are and what you're doing, you need to be able to rely on being able to hear what your partner's doing and how they're moving, and trying to keep track of them that way. If you start fighting, you might go, okay, well, we know they're halfway down the hallway. I'm going to go under and I'm going to come up on mid-stairs behind them, right? That's all you need to do. You don't need to know I'm going to come up behind 305 and then jump out through 308 and come out in 309 and stuff like that. It's not helpful if you're not comfortable fighting in that situation. You've got to try and keep it as specific but as broad as possible, so that you can then rely on other things that you know about your duo partner. What's the loadout? What are they wearing? I know that they're roughly going to be moving up the stairs at this time because they've made that call. So Resort is very much a different one for us.
Definitely. I have some, in that case, let's skip on how you guys do it, but I have some great clips from the Sherpa social team that has been made for us. Starting with a situation where they have pinned down an opponent in 301 in the loot room, and one of them is really close and the other one is actually outside. And I think it's a great example of how you can play away a little bit farther from each other, using nades and using good comms to create a situation in your advantage. So I'm just gonna play it and We're gonna see how it goes. Oh, let's put on the sound. Let's play it again with sound. Here we go. Right, a lot going on in a few seconds, but what do you guys think?
So it was interesting seeing the two different angles in there. Obviously, the nade was to get someone moving. I'm guessing that whoever was outside of 301 must have heard the audio coming through, but being able to, yeah, okay, we see the pre-fire there because, I mean, that's probably the right way to play it, particularly with the left-hand peak like
Definitely.
that. But again, it was using your duo partner to force a play. Are they wearing night vision goggles during the daytime? Very good.
You never know when you're gonna end up fighting, right?
Yeah, it's true. It's certainly a choice, but yeah, look, that would have been a very, very tough one to fight out from, because even if the nade wasn't there to get that player moving and I guess pushing them into that ambush, it would have been difficult to do anything from, because if they'd pushed out and tried to fight the person who was outside doing the rotation around the perimeter, then they would have opened themselves to a right-hand push from the player coming in from
100%.
The door of 301. Yeah.
100%. All right, I have another one for you. Let me check where it is. I think it's this one. Yeah. All right. So in this one, they're in a situation where they spot an opponent, and I think this is a great example of how you can flank and suppress fire and use playing together, but also flanking really quickly in your advantage to put another. Like, we've seen a red line through all these clips, right? Like, what they're doing is they're using good plays, good communication, nades, flanking to create a situation that they will basically always win, or maybe better way to phrase it is they have a very high chance of winning, because they're forcing the opponent in a really bad spot and they're forcing themselves in a really strong position. And I think that's really what playing in duo is all about. You want to put every fight in your advantage due to flanking, due to location, due to nading, due to communication. So let's play it once with sound and we can talk about it. All right, beautiful flank executed. I think a lot of good things that we can pick up from this one, right? Cringy, what do you think,
Definitely.
man? Definitely something you guys would do, or is this too advanced?
No, that is 100% how we would play. I just wish there was holes in the floor in dorms so that we could do that instead of having to go to resort for it.
Yes, I agree. Instead of trying to go outside and crouch your way down into that awkward window right on second floor.
That is 100% something that we would do, or more afraid would do. I'd be more the person holding the corner, and afraid would do the old flank up top and drop down. But that's just perfect. The way, like, keeping the pressure on him so he can't get out and rotate himself. Like, you see there, him just shooting at the door in the general area of where he may be, so that he's stuck inside and can't get out, which then means that he's stuck there, and the man can do the other guy can do the flank drop down, and you just know exactly where he is. And once he's done that drop down, both doors are covered. There's nowhere he's going, and even if he doesn't, get the push straight away, one pushes one door, one pushes the other door. The solo cannot win that situation.
No, it's like literally you say like
at best he gets a trade, and then your teammate just dumps your gear and you move on.
Move on.
Very, very hard situation to win there as the solo.
Yep, definitely. I think it also shows perhaps like why Skybridge can be a very bad push from especially as a solo, right? You have nowhere to go that way. But that's maybe nothing about duo, but more about positioning as a solo player there. I have another clip here. I think they have enemy on the second floor somewhere. And I think this shows how good communication, nades, and flanking can play again in a really good way. Something to give some thoughts. Let's put the sound on again here. Right, quick clip, but I think this is the perfect example of how you can use a nade. He's chosen M67 through the hole. The nade, I think, takes away any sound that there might be. Of course, he's on the bottom floor, so he makes less sound already. I think by throwing that nade, there's absolutely no chance that that opponent that's also getting shot by his teammate will catch that he's getting pushed and flanked from below and behind, right? He gets short, good communication from his teammate about where this opponent is or where he's moving. And, well, as you can see, I think the opponent has absolutely no clue that there's going to be an opponent next to him in, like, a matter of seconds. He's literally staying in the door like, okay, need to reload or something. It's just a perfect example.
Yeah, definitely. And you do get that target fixation a little bit as well. I mean, I do it even with all the
Same.
hours that I have in game. You know, if you have someone that's taking shots at you and you see a grenade land, your priority in your mind at that point is just, I need to make sure that I get to cover. I need to make sure that I get away from that grenade. I need to make sure that I'm not taking shots from this other player who's down the hallway. I may very well have even heard, you know, the rotation through the stairs and everything, but in my mind, that is not the number one threat, right? I'm still thinking about the player that was already shooting at me and the grenades that were landing around me. So being able to keep your opponent on the back foot is a really important part of winning any fight in Tarkov, whether it be a duo game or a solo game. And I think that what we just saw there was a great way of making sure that there was no opportunity for the opposing player to rally and get themselves back into the fight. It was over the moment that
100%.
nade went through the hole.
100%. All right. I want to move to another super important thing, and it's talking about flanking, right? And when maybe the question here is not how do you flank, but the question is when do you flank and when do you not flank, perhaps. I think for some people they automatically want to go in that flank straight away, but I think there's a fair balance of when a flank is the right play or the right call to make and when not, right? Like, I know staying close in some situations works really good, but it can get you killed as well very often, right? Like we've discussed this a few times this podcast. There's gonna be two of you in some hallway. You're an easy spot, right? Like they can hear the both of you. They have to look in one direction, hold one angle. It's definitely so much more dangerous to have different angles, because suddenly then your opponent has to look against two players on two different angles, right? And as we've seen in the last clip, for example, they're too focused on one angle. You can just completely surprise them with that flank. On the other hand, pulling a flank more often than not means that you are going to be split. And you're all going to be in 1v1 situations there. So basically you're playing both as a solo instead of as a duo really close together. So you need to be able to hold your own as a solo player before you're going to be effective at flanking players. And it's something that was said in chat as well. To pull these kinds of tactics, you need to be a capable solo player. If you're a really bad solo player already, you maybe do not have a lot of hours in game, everything that we're discussing right now is going to be completely not useful for you, because you're just going to die at the first time you try a flank, right? So maybe something that we should have said a little bit earlier, but before you can master the game of team play and duos, you need to master the solo play in some way to be able to be capable of having 1v1s and win those, being able to win fights with your teammate being downed and all that shit. So I think that's really important.
It is. It's a solid point there, because ultimately it's about controlling the conflict, being in control of the fight, because as a solo player, I know that if I'm fighting a group, I want to make it a 1v1 and then another 1v1 and then another 1v1 for however many players there are. If they're flanking and I'm on the front foot, if I have a good position, if I'm pre-meted, if I'm ready to take a fight, there's a good chance that I could actually counter that flank pretty well and end up taking the win. If it's against a capable duo, then there's much less chance. There's a very good chance that that flank, the first player has done something to put me on the back foot, meaning that that second player, the player doing the flank, is just coming in to clean up, right? And ultimately that's what it is. It isn't about creating two 1v1 scenarios. It is about one player engaging, forcing a scenario, and the second player making a play and really owning that conflict.
I agree with you. You also have to realize that sometimes when you're gonna flank, you're gonna leave your teammate basically behind, right? In some way. So what you need to watch out for sometimes with flanking is if you do it too quickly or maybe too noticeable for the opponent, that could make that they are gonna take that opportunity to push your teammate perhaps, or maybe push you instead of like staying in the same position. So I think there's definitely a balance of knowing when to flank or when to maybe play it out together. Especially against solos, like you're strong together as a duo against a solo. If you're gonna flank to 1v1s, it could create a really tricky situation where you're trying to flank, the opponent pushes, and then you're like, oh fuck, I'm flanking now. I can't get back to him or cover fire or run quickly back to it. So it's also good to know how long a flank is gonna take, perhaps. And communicate it in some way with your teammates, like I'm gonna do a short flank, I'm gonna do a long flank. Depends on the situation, maybe on the opponent. I'd say flanking against people that play really slow is always going to be a lot better compared to if you're fighting some double key chat that has been putting pressure on you guys for all the time, because they're gonna know that you're flanking and they're gonna see it coming, right? So you have to be aware of that and make those kind of decisions during a fight sometimes, which can be really hard, and they come with time, I guess. But in general, sometimes I see people flanking when I'm trying to heal or when I'm reloading or something. And I'd say that's the moment where you do not need to flank, right? Like, if my teammate needs to heal, if they need CMS, if they are low on max, if their armor is completely broken, I'm not gonna flank and leave them alone there. I'm gonna play it out together. And I think that's more often than not maybe a really good thing to know, like in decision making, like when are you gonna flank and when are you not gonna flank. Cringy, do you have any good tips and tricks about flanking against teams as a duo? Because we've discussed a lot of things fighting as a duo against a solo, which you can play out really advantageous. Let's say it's a 2 versus 2 situation. Any ideas?
Yeah, it's just, it always comes down to knowing, like, you got to be able to trust your duo partner. So I know that if I need to flank, I know that Afraid has a 90% chance of holding down that 2v1, because he knows I know while I'm flanking, he's just going to hold his peak, he's going to hold his corners, and he's going to wait it out and wait for me to get into a position where we can both fight. But you also have to know and try to assume their positioning, because the last thing you want to do is start flanking when one of them started to flank, and then all of a sudden you get picked because you thought he was still with his teammate. So
definitely, man.
It's really situational. It's something that the thing with Tarkov is sometimes you just have to make it up as you go. You can't really
you can write it down
you
necessarily.
Can't really just big brain it for because every raid's different, every player plays different, and you kind of just got to make it up as you go. But yeah, you gotta have trust in your teammate that they're gonna hold their positions, that they're capable in that 1v whatever it may be situation. You got to rely on your audio cue, and that's another thing that your teammate can help you for. He can be listening for jumps or different audio cues. If you hear broken glass, you know that they've moved here. If you hear wood, you may know that they're in this area. If you hear them jumping, they're probably going for their flank. They've gone out the window and they're coming through. And it's just really situational. You got to just got to make it up as you go, and but make smart decisions when needed.
Oh, definitely. I think that's a really good conclusion.
Yeah,
maybe
you don't want to just be like, oh, I'm gonna flank and just hope for the best. You really got to think it through.
I agree. Well, I'll step away from the PC for 1 second. I think something really strong is when you're gonna start combining flanking with nades and other distractions. We've seen a few clips that make a really good example of how nades and flanks can work really well together. Is there some things that you guys do together very often? And then I'll be right back while you guys talk about that.
I think we definitely do. It's all about creating, I guess, scenarios where one another can be successful, right? Whether that be creating a situation where the other can get a pick or a win or a kill, whatever it might be. Or it might even just be creating a plan B, something that we can fall back to, knowing that we've got an exit strategy if we need it, especially if it is a large, well-organized, 4 or 5 man where perhaps we couldn't go in and absolutely win the fight, toe to toe. I do think that there's probably a lot of that kind of happens a little bit non-verbally as well. We know if we're about to be overrun, or we know where we need to move to, or what we need to do to try and enable the other.
Yeah, for sure. And one thing that we also do quite often is you got to try to make when you're outnumbered, you have to try to make the other team feel uncomfortable. You got to throw them off their game. If you can make the other team make the mistakes, then that automatically gives you the advantage. So a lot of stuff that we'll do is, we'll throw out a grenade to make them move, so it starts giving us audio cues, or this random pre-fires in the general direction that makes them think, oh, they know where I am, I'm under pressure. By building up that pressure for the enemy team, they will start making mistakes. And sometimes it's just about getting the single pick. Like, if you're a duo and you run up against a 4-man, the moment you kill one of them, they start panicking a little bit. They're like, uh-oh.
100%.
What are we doing now? And then you throw a couple of nades down there, get them on their toes, and
that's your opportunity, right?
Sometimes it's making the other squad, take the other squad out of their comfort zone, and then just punish them for it.
I agree completely. Okay, I have a great example of a flank, actually. I'm playing with my friend Joey here, and we actually literally just spawned here on interchange. Mind with you, I'm playing a DVL pistol here, so I'm sniper pistol, which from the start puts me in more of a support role than it puts me in an aggressive role, right? So we approach here. I'm first though. I ran up first. And the moment I go here, I hear something, and we're just gonna immediately show how you can use flanking and your gun and your teammate to play out a fight in your advantage. Easy as that. All right. What do you guys think of this?
This is pretty much what we were talking about before. Yeah, creating that opportunity for for your teammate to be able to make a play.
I think it's great, right? Like, I have a sniper. I'm not gonna rush in there in the bunker and kill that guy in a CQB situation. He's super focused on my teammate here. He's not gonna be able to hear any of my audio probably running around. He's even throwing nades at my teammate. So I decide very quickly here, like, okay, if I want this to work, I have to flank straight away, because it's quite a run to pull this flank off. You're not gonna be there in 4 seconds. So it's like a really quick realization, like, I'm gonna be super useless standing here with my DVL just holding the corner. I need to pull that flank straight away. And because of that, it's actually a really easy kill, because my teammate is just communicating to me like, you should be seeing here, he's making sound, he's making movement. This is a perfect execution, I think, of a duo gameplay or game plan where you like can both really put the opponent in a bad situation here.
Yeah, it's like a textbook flank.
Definitely a textbook flank. You're right. All right. Oh, sorry. Let me see if I missed any clips today that we have been sending. Oh yeah, I have a really beautiful clip. Before we go to the tips and tricks, I have a really beautiful clip from Fuzzy here once again that I want to talk over because I think it's just one of the most perfect plays that I've seen. I'm just gonna play it. I'm not gonna say anything. I'm just gonna play it. Right, I think Afraid has to go. I think it's time. We're running it a little bit late. That's okay. Cringy, are you still with me?
Afraid's had to go to work. I'm still here. Yep.
Okay, that's great. Let's make it a little bit quick then. I think this is a great Nate. Afraid, thank you by the way for being here today. We absolutely appreciate you. Good luck on work, mate. I think this is great. His teammate is in the bunker. Fuzzy is on the stairs here. There's a 2-man basically hold up below them. And they basically communicate when they're gonna throw an M67, which creates the opportunity for Fuzzy to push it in through the nade that his teammate is throwing. And make a push that they're just never gonna see coming. So I'm gonna play it one more time. It's absolutely beautiful.
That's amazing. Yeah, because of the M67 long fuse time, that first person he runs past is in the corner as soon as he comes out that gate to his right. He wasn't even ready to shoot because he wasn't expecting a push because he's heard the grenade and he's probably looking around trying to figure out where the nades landed so that he doesn't get blown up. And they're just not expecting it. There's like, even in that situation, I wouldn't have expected that push. That would have caught me so off guard.
Yeah, literally, right.
And that's just the perfect way of using nades to your advantage. I know I keep talking about it, but nades
we've
really
seen it many times.
Players.
We've seen it in a lot of clips, right?
They were both worried about where the nade was. They weren't worried about that P90 coming down the stairs, and they got punished for it.
Definitely, and it's a great execution by Fuzzy, of course. That's being said too. All right. Let's wrap it up a little bit. We have some tips and tricks to go over. Some of these we've already touched on. So we're just gonna go over them quickly a little bit. I want to start with the best tips and tricks comms. Like we've discussed it already. Make sure you have that one word. We use comms, but make sure you guys have that one word that if it's being called, everyone just shuts up, right? Like sometimes you just need the audio in game. Of course, you can mute or deafen in Discord, but it should not be necessary. Have that word and the respect of having that word within your team. I think it's super important.
Oh, 100%.
Secondly, communicate your gear. We've touched on that as well. Knowing what your opponents, knowing what your teammates have gear-wise, like being it their backpack, their helmet, or their gun. Being able to distinguish enemy versus teammate shots. Knowing that Pilgrim is going to be your teammates or your opponent. Super important. And I think it's also important to let them know when you're changing it, right? Like if you're switched from a mutant to a loud M4 or something, let your teammate know so that they're not going to be like scared by a loud M4 shooting off and they're going to be like, oh, that's right next to me. So I think that's really super important.
Understanding your teammate's gear is not it's not a flawless strategy.
Definitely not.
I've been to people that are wearing the same gear as your teammate, but it's definitely a big help. There's been numerous times there where I've gone to shoot somebody and I've been like, oh, no, that's Afraid because he had a tri-zip and an ulted on. I knew straight away it was Afraid.
Yeah, I agree. It should not be like your key point. Like, I rather would always know where my teammate is based on sound or callouts, of course. But if you have, it could help you in some situations where you're not sure and you're like, oh, yeah, they have a Pilgrim on. That's recognizable, right? Duo trigger discipline. I have a clip for this one. Before we go in there, let me see where that clip has went to. I cannot find it right now. Maybe you can go on with the tips before, so I can find the clip.
Absolutely, yeah. Muting when you die, massive massive thing that you need to do. Obviously, when you die, you can put out a little bit of communication there, but as we've said previously, it's all about keeping it short and sweet. So you can just a simple call out, for example, of I've died inside Ultramed, mute. Your teammate knows they're at Ultramed. You don't want to just be sitting there talking, being like, "Oh, I've died because of this, and I've died to this, and there's this and that, and this and this," because as we all know, like we're all Tarkov players, it is very, very reliant on audio.
Definitely.
And missing that single audio cue can mean surviving or dying. And yeah, so muting when you die is definitely a big one that you should everyone should get into the habit of.
I agree. It's something that we touched on a little bit earlier, but I know all you guys play with the second monitor and their teammate sharing their stream on Discord. I know a lot of you guys are doing it. It's a very easy way to see where your teammate is and where they're looking at, right? I know that. I understand that that makes your life a whole lot easier, but as a trip or maybe an exercise, try to go in raid once without sharing your screen and try to rely fully on sound of your teammate and communications of your teammate. If you can get to the point where you do not need that second screen anymore, it will make you so much better as a teammate. It will make you so much better or capable as a duo. Because every time I have to look to my second monitor, it's keeping my focus of the main game. Every time I have to look, I have to maybe wait, I'm not doing anything. If you can get to the point where you do not need the second monitor at all to play with your teammate, and you can shred and do not get a lot of team kills, that's where you're starting to become really dangerous as a duo. And that's where I personally would like to be with everyone that I play with. But I know it's a far way.
Definitely.
I know it's not easy. I think it's... I know there's people that just ask me like, hey, can you stream in Discord? Like, there's people I know that just need it to perform well in the team play. And I understand that. But as an exercise, try doing it once. It's okay if you die a few times that way. Like, it will not go great the first time you do it. It's gonna be, is this you? Is this you? Oh, I shot you. I'm sorry. I TK you. It's gonna happen. But you can only get better by doing it. So my tip and trick of the day, try to play without Discord for once. See how it goes.
100%. If you're relying on Discord, you probably need to work on your communication as a duo.
I agree completely. Next up, I want to say it's never your teammate's fault. Do you ever give Afraid the fault of dying, Cringy?
No. Unless it was Afraid that shot me. Other than that, no.
That's very right.
As we've said earlier, you need to be able to... A good duo needs to be made up of two good solo players. It's not a carry, it's a teamwork situation. So no, it's never Afraid's fault. Look, sometimes you know, your duo partner will make a mistake that leads to you getting put into a bad situation. But at the end of the day, you're the one that's in control of your mouse and keyboard. You're the one that's firing your shots. You're responsible for your death. Because at the end of it, you're the one that lost that fight, not them.
Yes.
So yeah, sometimes your teammates can put you into a bad situation.
100%.
But you're the one that died in that situation. So yeah, blaming your teammates not really going to solve anything. You should more just look at what you could have done differently and then move on.
Yeah, I think if you blame your teammate too often for dying, it's probably also not a great team to be with. I'd say like there's just gonna be playstyles or people that you do not really work well with in Tarkov. Try to find that people or persons that you work well with, you can build synergy with, that you enjoy playing with, perhaps. There just naturally will be people that do not match your playstyle exactly, or are just communicating very different than you. So don't be mad because a team or a duo doesn't work. Like, there could be a lot of things, but at least never blame them for your own deaths. That's never gonna help.
You can also change your own playstyle to gel better with theirs.
Definitely.
So I have two groups of people that I play with. I play with like Afraid, Trent, and Lionheart, and then I play with another group of people who's like Sleepin' and Chambers and stuff like that. the two groups play completely different to one another. So sometimes I have to change up my play style a bit to work better with the groups. Sometimes when I'm playing with Afraid and Lionheart, etc., I have to play hyper aggressive because that's how they play. And when you're all playing the same way, it works better. The other group like to play it a bit more tactical. We usually play Woods 99% of the time. They like to run DMRs and Bolties and stuff like that. So then I slow it down because if I'm shift Wing in there with an MP7 and they're all playing the long game, if I run into a trio at close range, I'm going to die.
And they're going to be
they're not going to die
helping
because
you.
they're in the distance. They may get the picks. They may still win that fight, but I'm going to be sitting there in the lobby for the next 25 minutes while they clean up.
Yeah, just waiting, doing your scaff. Like, yep. I agree, man. Adapting to your teammates' playstyles could be changing if you win or lose rates so much. And that goes both ways. Like, both play aggressive or both play the longer, slower game, right? Like, that doesn't go for one playstyle. It goes for every playstyle.
Yeah. Or if you play separate, you got to communicate that.
Yes,
you can
for
definitely
sure.
play one aggressive, one slow. Like Afraid talked about it earlier. Sometimes I'll play the Overwatch, but you have to be on the same page. Like Afraid understands that I'm, 150 meters out. I'm not going to be there to help him in that close quarters.
Yeah.
And you got to know that and take that risk if that's what you want to do.
100%. All right, another tip and trick. What do you call the building that you see at the end there, Mr. Cringy?
The building over there is either scale or new construction.
Okay, and what do you call the building that the gun is and where we're looking from right now, basically?
That is Stronghold.
Cool. It's actually funny that you say that because what we would say is Fortress, what we're in right now, and Big Skelly that we're looking at right now. And however it doesn't really matter because I can completely understand what you're saying. If I would give these callouts, would you understand it as well?
Yes, 100%. So Stronghold is our main go-to, but there's many callouts for it. It's Reshi's house, it's Stronghold, it's Fortress, it's all sorts of places. So yeah, there's multiple calls, but if I was to make the call out, I'd be saying that I am pushing Stronghold.
Yeah. I think the point I'm trying to make here is it doesn't really matter what you call something as long as everyone in the group understands what the call out mean, right? Like you can be calling something donkey or booth.
Yeah.
Like I don't care, but as long as I understand and I hear my teammate call out like donkey and I know exactly where it is, great call out. Short, precise, gives the information to my teammate. But if you're going to give call outs that your teammates do not understand or do not know, perhaps you're going to be in a really tricky situation because they're going to be like, where was that? So yeah, try to
100%.
learn your own callouts, and it doesn't matter what they are as long as everyone knows what they are. The same goes for Woods, I think. Which rock is called what rock, Renji? I've heard you Woods 101, so I want to know the right answers here.
That's where I can quickly touch back on what you were saying about you can have the call out be whatever you want it to be.
Yeah, sure, go ahead. What's your call
as long as you're on the same page. So the rock down the bottom here under the sawmill next to the water, near where the tent spawns the flash drive.
Yeah, I know it.
What would you call that rock?
We call it water rock.
Water rock. I call it purple.
I've never heard that call out.
You wouldn't have.
No.
Nobody would have heard that call out besides the group that I play Woods with.
And that's completely fine because if you all guys know where it is.
I said purple. Yeah. You're like, huh? What do you mean? Who's purple? What's purple?
What's purple?
If I say
Pilgrim?
If I say purple, the group I play with knows that I'm talking about that exact rock.
I think that's the point we're trying to make here, right? Like, it doesn't matter what you call something as long as everyone knows where it is.
Exactly right. Yeah, so the rock down on the water there near the USB, that's purple. The rock above it with the duffel bag on it is duffel rock.
Duffel. I agree. I know we're on the same page there.
The one at the north of the sawmill. Mind my language, but that's called dickhead.
We all call it that, I think.
I think everybody calls it that. Well, most people at least. The one to the right of that rock is called Trixie.
This one? The small one?
Yeah. No, the one.
that one.
Little small one there on the corner.
Oh, that one. Yeah, that one, right?
No, the one above sawmill, above the log piles. Yep.
Oh, that one. Yeah,
there
check.
is called Trixie.
Okay, I've never heard that
Um,
one either. I don't even think I have a very specific call out for that
I
one. It's
think-
just
I
near
think-
dickhead.
Yeah, no, it's the one on right on the corner next to the road above the car. It's just a tiny little rock. Yep, that one. That's called Trixie. I think that is a OCE. May just be an OCE call out. I'm not sure.
You learn
But
something
that
new
one's
every
called
day. I don't think I even have a specific
one's-
call out. Yep.
That one's called Trixie, and then there's the big long one over to the right, which is called Spine.
Yeah, that's the long one, right? The one that
The
leads to
long one, yep.
the sniper rock.
Yep, so then there's Sniper Rock up there, and then that's Spine, and then the two gaps in between. So there's the gap in between the Little Rock and Sniper Rock. That's North Gap, and then there's South Gap.
Yeah, so it's not going to be gap, but you distinguish which gap. So if they're on the left or the
gap,
right,
yeah.
basically from that rock.
And then there's the two big rocks above the Violet Shack, where
Yeah,
the
those two.
guard shack where Violet spawns. They're called. There's two rocks at either place. We call them North Twins and South Twins, because each spot has two rocks there, and we call them the Twin Rocks. So there's North Rock, which is closer towards cabins, and then there's South Rock, which is closer to
The water, right?
Med Camp. So there's
Med
North
Camp,
Twins
yeah.
and South Twins.
Yeah. Got it. That's a good call out, actually. That's a good call out. That's actually really precise, and I think it's good. Like, it doesn't have to be as precise as this, but I think it will really help you clear up some situations if you have call outs like this, because there's going to be no confusion in the game about where an opponent is if a call out is being made.
100%. I could go on for 20 minutes for call outs on Woods, because the one group that I play Woods with primarily, I'm not even kidding, I think there's like 5 or 6 of us, and we have done like thousands of Woods raids together. So
I think we're gonna skip on the nade tips. So as you said before as well, Cringy, you need to put in the time together, man. If you want to grow at effective duo team play in Escape from Tarkov, put in time, put in raids, do different maps, try different loadouts.
Yeah,
put in the time together, and you'll see you improve.
It's like everything in life. If you put time into it, you'll get better. You got to learn. You got to practice.
Yeah,
that's just the way it is.
And perhaps stick with people like. I know a lot of you guys love playing in maybe the Sherpahub or looking for a group on Discords, but it definitely helps to play with the same people a little bit more often. It's super hard to get synergy with people you've never played with before from the first raid onwards. Like, if you're really good and you got a lot of hours in this game, of course, naturally, you're just gonna work good in some degree, but it just needs some more time to learn each other playstyles and all that. So don't be afraid if you play with someone once and it fails. Like, that's very normal. It happens to everyone.
100%. Yeah.
And some advice I would give: start with duos and then go on to squads. I'd say the more players there is in your team, the harder it gets for sound, for communication, for like making it work, right? It just gets gradually harder. I personally do not like playing with more than 3 people. But I've been in quads and 5-mans that are very, very tight knit run and works, and everyone has a role exactly. Like, if there's really being taught about how the 5-man is going to be played, if it's just going to be 5 random people with no discussion, no rules, no whatever, it's just failed from the start, in my opinion. So I avoid all that. But definitely start with duoing, and you can gradually build up the groups better and bigger, if you ask me. I think we can make a whole different episode about 5-mans. I have an idea about that. So perhaps somewhere next year we're going to do an episode about how you can actually effectively run a 5-man in Tarkov without dying straight away. Yeah, stay tuned for that, perhaps. All right.
Duos and trios is peak Tarkov. That's where Tarkov becomes the real Tarkov. I think it's the best way to play it, for sure.
I agree completely. All right. We've been rambling on for a long time already. We've covered a lot of ground today, Cringy. Thank you so much for being here today with Afraid. I think we've touched on a lot of different and interesting topics today. I hope everyone has learned something. Is there any questions in chat, boys, about me, Cringy, or effective duo team play? I'm gonna give it a minute before we head on.
Yeah, no worries.
All right. Mm-mm-mm.
I think we're pretty good there.
Thanks a lot. I think we're good, boys. Let's move on to the last part then. Cringy, thank you so much again. Can we get a shout out
No
for
worries.
Cringy, please? I would really. Sounded like the OC call outs are a bit tricksy. Well, apparently we never have to play together, Cringy, because you guys call outs are absolutely trash. So that's what we learned today.
It's mainly Woods that those call outs get a bit confusing, but that's just because we go into so much detail.
All right.
Because Woods is so big, you just got to know exactly where everyone is at all times, and it helps to have many call outs for the many different areas.
I agree. If you all can follow this absolutely mad lad here, I would absolutely appreciate it. Cringy has woken up very early together with your freight that will be below, so go give that guy a follow to support his coffee run today. I would genuinely appreciate it. So yeah, thank you all. My name is Seikosha. I would appreciate it if you give me a follow as well. We're live 2 or 3 days during the week to play some Tarkov, learn some things, and all that. So give me and Cringy some love, please. We would appreciate it. The next time is going to be on the 18th of December. That's going to be the last episode of the year. I'm going to keep the topic a little bit secret, but we're going to announce it in the next upcoming days. There will be a special guest, hopefully. So we're going to make it a nice Christmas episode. It's going to be a special guest that we will announce very soon. So definitely stay tuned for that one. If there's any topics that you would like to see in this podcast, if there's any clips that you think can be really useful, send them over to me through Discord or Twitch or Twitter, whatever. I can be found on all the socials for that. And then I think we have to look who we can raid today. Let's see. Do we have any ideas? Is there any Sherpas that are live right now? If we look to the Sherpahub team before we end it here. Let's look.
There is.
There's gonna be Kenny22. I think that's a German Sherpa. Can we confirm that that guy is still...
There is a link in
we're rating seriously bald already. Let's fucking go. Okay, there we go. That's a great, I think. If I read chat, I'm sorry, did I skip chat? I'm a bad person. Okay, well, our rating seriously bald.
Before we go, thank you for having me, and from Afraid as well, thank you for having him, and keep it up. Love the work, and I'll chat to you next time.
Alright, boys, go give Seriously Bald some love, please. We would appreciate it. Spam some Sherpa emotes in the chat. Go give this guy a follow, give me a follow, and we'll see you guys in approximately 3 weeks for a new topic with some new epic guests. And yeah, pleasure to be here. My name is Seikosha, and we'll see you next time.